Are we live? We're doing this different this year. Yes, we're live. I mean, this year. Welcome to our very first episode of Parents Time Out. And we've changed some stuff, and apparently I'm not real with it yet. So this is the time of the week when we gather with other parents because we all need encouragement, inspiration, and just a reminder that we're not alone, because parenting is really rewarding and it's very hard. And it can go from being great to a grind to great in just a matter of minutes. So this is when we gather with other experts, other parents, that we can just share ideas and ask questions. And tonight, I'm so excited that we have my friend, Paula Rakestraw. Hi, Paula, who is on with us. Paula is a wife of one, Darren, and she's the mom of 3 kids, all teenager. Well, Caroline's 21, but 17 to 21. And if you go to Crossroads, Paula is also at Crossroads. Her title is Creative Director and Experienced Producer. So what that means is we've kind of dubbed her the Christmas Queen, because she has produced Awaited in the past. She's done all that choreography for Awaited. And then this year she helped produce the Christmas special. So she is, when you think of somebody who is creative, you think of Paula. So Paula, welcome. And what would you like people to know about you?
I guess I'm also a teacher. In my past life, I was a teacher. I love middle schoolers, which is kind of not the common age to love, but they're my passion. I love middle school kiddos. And then I also sort of began leading groups of kids in creative projects or classes or things like that. Destination Imagination is one of my very favorite programs. I just adore it. I led that at a school when my kids were little. And I teach a musical theater class. So I feel like if you are introducing me as like an expert in creativity in kids, I would agree to that. But I would also say I'm a very normal, regular mom and have lots of funny stories about failure, which I feel like is the best place to learn. And specifically around creativity, it just is fun to share those stories just as encouragement. And we were already laughing before we started just about different things. And our kids can say really embarrassing things. And mine are almost adults now. So it's been fun to retell those stories and just hear their reactions. So I have a couple of those for tonight too.
Yeah, I will say, Paula, though, you're saying you're just a normal, regular mom. Because you are so well known for your creativity, and especially we see the fruit of your creativity and these amazing productions that you do, I think some people are intimidated and think, I could never be like Paula, because you've just got something that we don't have. And that's really why I'm excited about having you tonight, because I know you pretty well. And you have all kinds of amazing qualities, and they are things that we can learn from and we can do too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So first of all, this really doesn't, well, I guess maybe this has to do with not so much creativity, but knowing our kids. One of the stories that you told me that really impacted me, and I have told so many of my friends, and it's about Adam and bedtime routine. So why don't you tell us about that?
Adam's my middle child. It feels like, I don't know why, but the middle children seem to get the best stories about them. I think I have a background in psychology, and one of my very favorite things in life is understanding how God created each of us super uniquely. And then I've sort of just accepted this theory that we're all born into this world with amazing characteristics that God gave us specifically. And then it feels like the world's job is to try and steal them. Like, it just feels like that's what happens from birth even. So this story that you're talking about, Adam was, I think, not quite 2 when this happened, but one of the best metaphors I've ever thought about when it comes to parenting or kids is this whole idea around boats and how many different types of boats there are. Like, there's a crew boat with 10 people that need to work together. If you think of a boat like trying to get across an ocean, there's a sailboat that just uses wind, or there's a speedboat that uses the motor. And if you think about, all those boats have the same exact mission and objective to get across the ocean, but very, very different strategies and ways to execute that. And I like to think about our kids like that. Like, if we all have the same objective to have our kids be responsible and kind and have a deep faith and independent, but one of them is a motorboat and one of them is a sailboat, it's a completely different story how they're going to arrive at that destination. So the story that Kim's referring to is when our kids were little, we had our daughter first and then 2 boys. And Caroline was just less than 2, and we started this bedtime routine where we would let her have a few minutes after we would, sing to her, pray to her, whatever we all do to our kids before we put them to bed. And we'd let her have a few minutes with her books, like her picture books that she would sit in her bed and sort of flip through on her own. And we would come back in after a few minutes, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and tell her good night and turn out the light, and she would happily go to sleep. And we thought that was helpful for instilling a love of reading, helping her to like calm herself down, get herself to sleep. We do as you do with one child. We're like, that's a great routine. We're such good parents. We're going to keep doing that. So child number 2 comes along, and Adam is wired a little bit differently. He was around 2, same age when we started doing this. And we gave him his books, and we did the same routine, and we left the room, and we'd come back in, and we would tell Adam it was time to go to bed. And we were met every time, every night, with a screaming meltdown every night. And it was a long meltdown. And it went on for longer than I care to admit. We just decided this kid's stubborn. He's hardwired, and he's just going to be challenging, and we need to show him who's boss. And we went night after night just telling him he had to turn out that light and go to sleep. And one night it was my turn. I came in, started the routine of telling him that it was time to put the light out. And I noticed he had finished the last book in the stack of books that he had. And I said it was time to turn the light out, and he shut the book and he looked at me and he said, "Good night, mommy. I love you," or whatever he said. And he rolled over and went to sleep. And I totally have to admit that I was like, we broke him. Yes, we did it. Like, it had been long enough. We won. It was right. And then I realized maybe it had something to do with the stack of books. So the next night we gave him 4 picture books, or however many we did. And we said, when you're finished with these books, it's time to go to bed. Never had another issue. And we realized this kid at 2 is hardwired to be a task completer. And that was the problem. And we had worked ourselves up into this whole, like, this is what we did. This is what we have to show him. And it just gave us such a picture of who Adam is. And he's the 19-year-old today. And he is still so much just a task completer. You give him something, he focuses on it. He likes to do things one at a time. He works hard. He plays baseball in college. I think because of that wiring of like tedious repetition of doing something again and again, it just was who he is. And it just reminded me how different every child is. And for the idea of creativity, I think that also lends itself to encouraging that in your child. Really helps them unlock that, who they are, how they're wired. It helps you notice things. If you, like we're going to talk about tonight, if you give them some creative activities and endeavors, it allows that space for them to just breathe and be who they are. And it gives you the opportunity as the parent to really notice what those things are and help them become whatever boat they are and get to the objective of crossing the ocean, or whatever your goals are.
Right. And I want to, before we talk about the creativity part of it, the thing I most like about that story is that you and Darren, like, first you pat yourself on the back and say, yeah, we broke him. He's got it. And then you were curious. You're like, wait a minute, was it really that we broke him? Is there something that he's worried about? And I think curiosity is one of the best tools that we can use as parents, as we parent our kids, because you're right. Some of them are speedboats and some of them are sailboats, and they just require different fuel. They require different cleaning. I mean, it's all different. So with Adam being, we've talked about him being more of it's a right brain. Yeah.
Yes.
Is that right brain? Yeah, right. He's more right brain. How do you encourage creativity in a kid like that?
So for him, it's really thinking about creativity a little differently than I think how we tend to think about it. I think we think of the arts, right? Like painting and dancing and singing. Crafts. Yeah. If you don't like crafts, you're not creative. And that's totally untrue. I think something we were just talking about the other day, that you're born with a talent that maybe you can develop and work on and be advanced in that, but nobody's born really with creativity. It's taught and it's encouraged and it's developed and it's grown. So I think a friend of mine came up with this thing he calls the creative inventory, and it's really simple. And it can be super complicated. You can go into like lots of studies about what kind your personality and where you fit and all the quadrants and all the things. But for kids, I think it's super easy. It's, 4 types of creatives. And one are the kiddos who have this internal need to create. They're the kids who bring you, Mommy, I painted this thing. I made you this card. Look at this flower. Like they have this thing and they just need to get it out. And you probably know adults like that too, who just make a thing. They don't care where it goes or what it's used for. They just had to make it because it's inside of them. The other one is from more of an external need. That's actually where I fall. So, Crossroads said, we're going to do a Christmas show. Great. I'm so excited. I want to create a Christmas show. But I didn't say, you guys have this Christmas thing and it just has to come out. Like, it was from an external need. So those are the kiddos who, sit at the table and you say, like, here are some painting supplies or colors or whatever, and make something. And they happily are going to create whatever that is. Those are two tangible creativity, more of the line along the lines of what we think of as creative. The other two are super interesting, though. The third one is what he calls a strategist. And those are the people who are like, well, how are we going to make that? So you want me to make this thing? Well, how do I make it? And they love thinking about the problem solving of how something can get done. And then the fourth one is what we call the philosopher, which are your why kids. Now, I know every kid goes through a why stage, but those are the kids that just never leave it. They're just constantly, well, why? Well, why this? Well, why that? And it's, yes, it's annoying, but it's so amazing. And their little brains are already thinking, and adult brains are already thinking about those brilliant solutions to the whys. And that's how we get incredible things in this world. So I think I just wanted to share that it's not just arts and crafts or even singing or dancing. And Adam, so my Adam is definitely in that strategist.
Right. Yeah.
And guess what? He's pre-law now, because that's such a great fit for him, because he used to love thinking, it scared us a little bit because he loved to think about the rules. And then, well, couldn't you just break that rule by doing this? And we were like, oh my gosh, sure. Okay. But we would have so many of those conversations of, well, that's your goal in life, I guess, is to break every rule you can. But really, that was his brain thinking around and through different solutions. And that's creative. He does not like to paint or draw or dance. He's very black and white, but that's where his creativity landed.
It is creative. And I think as parents, it can be also super annoying and frustrating. Yes. And so how do you, when you have a kid like Adam, who's trying to figure out how you break every rule, or you have a kid who asks why all the time, how would you help? What would you say to parents to help them get through it? And really, I think we need to reframe it. Like, they're not trying to annoy us. They're really showing us a part of who they are.
Yes, that's what it's the observation. If you can step back and go, okay, wait, this kid is showing me a little bit of who he is or who she is. Observe, take notes. That sounds so silly, but it's really like an observation process. It's another funny Adam story I just thought of. I did not mean to throw this kid under the bus. I think they were probably like 12, 13, I don't know, in that stage, and they're all in the same stage at the same time. So they were driving us crazy. And we made this agreement that before we went to bed every night, we were going to write something on this little poster board that we put in our closet. Like, they couldn't see it. And every night we would write something, like anything we could think of that was good, because they were so annoying. And it was that idea of observing something that is something that we need to know about our child. And instead of just letting it eat at us, we're going to write it in a positive way of like, Adam asked a million questions today, or, Caroline stood up for herself, and really she was being bossy, but she stood up for herself, those kind of things. So this poster was in our closet for years. And just like last year, they discovered it. And we found the three of them in our closet. We'd forgotten about it. It was stuck back in the corner. And they were reading it. And so in that stage, the most annoying child was Adam, but the type of stage that we were going through. So he says, hey, look, guys, my name's up there the most. I'm clearly the favorite child. It was hilarious. But yeah, thinking of it as an observation and trying to take a piece of who your child is, I guess, from it, and help them know that too. Give them that framework, whether it's the 4 quadrants or whatever, but they need those words too to understand, they should be proud of that. They should be so proud that they're the person that digs deep and asks the why question, or that they have something that's so important to them that it bubbles up out of them, or however they're wired. They should be proud of that, and they should recognize it. And it's our job to help them along the way, even though, because our greatest strengths are our greatest weaknesses.
Yes.
That's where the annoyance comes in, right? Because as a child, well, and an adult, that happens too. We're developing. So we're trying to develop the healthy side of whatever that beautiful strength is, instead of letting it just keep being a weakness.
Yeah. And I would say for parents, if you're looking at your kid and you're going, there is no positive side of this behavior, look up reframing, because there's all kinds of great articles on parenting and reframing behavior. Because really, I know with one of our kids, it was just super stubborn. She was so stubborn. It's like, what is positive about that? Well, because of her background, she didn't live with us for the first 10 years. Her stubbornness actually helped protect her, and it helped her be an independent thinker. And so I love that idea of the poster board in your closet. Maybe even bring it out of the closet and put it where the kids can see it. That's great. But we have a question from Erin. She loves your story about Adam, and she wonders if there are examples of creative activities for kids. Would love to learn how to be more observant like that as a parent.
Yes, I have I just kind of sat and figured out some fun things that we've done over the years that are really simple. I'm actually less of an arts and crafts person and more of like a game or a fun activity or something like that. And these I feel like are also the bonus of these is that once your kids get used to things like this, they give you a little bit of a break. So you don't have to sit at the table and do the glitter and things like that. So I'm just going to run through those, Kim, and you can stop me.
Cool. Great.
And some of these we got from one of our favorite shows when our kids were young, were Whose Line Is It Anyway, which is a great improv show with Wayne Brady and some other people. But there's this super simple TV channel game that we used to play all the time with them. I used to do it a lot when we were getting dinner ready and they'd be in the other room. And it's simply just like we have three. So one of the kids would take a turn having the remote control and they would point it at the other two and they would say click, and then they would just come up with whatever the channel was. So it was the nature channel, the comedy channel, NFL, or a cooking show or whatever. And whatever the person with the controller said, the other two had to act out. And it was, I mean, they would just spend a lot of time doing something like that. And it involves no materials. The only watch out I would have, we have two boys, super physical. And somehow it always became violent, of course. So we had to be for a while, of course, like Nature Channel, they were fighting bears, and then sports, they were sumo wrestlers, or it always eventually went back to violence. But I would pretend like I had the remote control, so I would just yell click from the kitchen. But that was a fun one.
So funny.
We did for years at Crossroads. Actually, we did the 48-hour film challenge, which was such a fun weekend. It was back when I was young enough to not need sleep, so I could stay up all weekend. But you would get an object, a line of dialogue, and a genre, and you had to create a short film in 48 hours. And so our kids watched me do that. And so I created I think we called it a 48-minute challenge. It's super simple. You just tell them, do a fairy. You don't have to write it, but like create a fairy tale, and you have a spoon, and your line of dialogue is, how did that get there? And that's it. And you just let them go. And, and I would say too, the first couple of times you do things like this, it'll fail. That's okay. Like they'll do it for 2 minutes and then they'll start fighting and you'll be like, well, that was terrible. Just don't give up. Just give the little pieces like that, and you'll find things that work for your kids. They might make up their own things. Another one is what I call the Apollo 13 challenge. Like, that scene where Ed Harris has that box of stuff and he just dumps it out and he goes, we need to use what's in this box. Yes. And he draws like to get from here to here. Yeah. So, give him a stuffed animal, give him random rubber bands and toothpicks and plastic forks and whatever you find around your house, and say, you need to get this elephant from the kitchen to the dining room and whatever, build a bridge, whatever you need to do. But they love to build things. And then that's when you can just watch your kids come alive. Like somebody will ask, like, well, why does he have to get to the dining room? And then you'll see the other kid like, it doesn't matter. He has to get to the dining room. Like that is magic. Even though it feels like they're getting passionate or excited or, maybe even conflict happening, that is magical stuff happening. And you can observe them right with them or from a distance and really start to learn who they are. Family night.
Erin has young kids. And I know, Erin, you talking about the film challenge. With my grandkids, what I've done, they love to hear stories. So I will tell them, what food do you want in it? What animal do you want in it? And what person do you want in it? And they think it's hysterical. And now that the oldest is 6, he will often help tell the story. So just getting them to create their own story or be part of creating their own story. And then you were going to talk about family night, Paula.
Yeah. Well, you're like a walking Mad Lib, Kim. That's awesome. I'd like to do that someday. Family night, I think with little, even tiny kids, just establishing whatever that is for you. We had years where the kids had to pick what we were going to eat for dinner and then what activity would it be. And the rule was whatever they said we had to do. So they were miserable fails. There was what's that stuff called? It's been so many years. Paper mache, like on the ceiling until we tried to sell the house, and 2 of them ended up crying. It was terrible. But we didn't say, okay, forget family night. We were like, all right, let's make a rule that has to be within an hour and a half, or, however we made it, modified it and worked for us. But yeah, that's a good one that you can do. We were going to talk about stifling and the importance of like, what does stifling creativity look like? So do you want to tell the 8s and the snowman story that you shared the other day? I thought that was really...
Paul and I were talking the other day about how a lot of times our kids, they'll naturally do things that are outside of the box, but sometimes we're trying to put them back in the box. And my daughter was homeschooling her kindergartner, and he was supposed to practice making 8s. And so he was making the 8s. And then, 8s look like snowmen. So then he was making them into snowmen, putting hats on them and little carrot noses and all this stuff. And you talk about stifling or squashing their creativity. She was like, no, we're making 8s. And then she finally realized, wait a minute. He's practicing making 8s by making snowmen. That's way more fun than just making 8s. So she allowed him to continue to do that. And she also realized that when you're homeschooling, you're way more focused on one kid than a teacher in a classroom of 20 would be. A teacher in a classroom of 20 would probably be thrilled that he's making snowmen and happily entertaining themselves. But yeah, Paula, we just want to talk about, as parents, sometimes our kids are doing different creative things and we can squash them. So what are some watch outs you have for us? Ways that we can avoid squashing and instead encourage?
Yeah, I think question asking is huge. So, your daughter saying, what are you making? That looks amazing. Like, I've made that mistake many times where I go, oh, what a great snowman. And you get, it's a lizard.
That's good.
And then that can immediately make them feel like, oh, it must be a really bad lizard because she thought it was a snow. So, also I would say, Kim, like, it's also okay. Like, my kids are great and they weren't scarred by the lizard thing. Like, you say the wrong thing sometimes and that's okay. But just in general, trying to ask questions like, what are you making? Tell me about that. Lots of tell me about that, or lots of say more about that, or what is this? Sometimes you can see a picture that looks a little scary and you're like, what is that? And then they describe it to you and go, oh, okay. Who knows what is in their little brain, but asking lots of questions, I think. And then the other thing I was going to say about the snowman story is I also think that, the more of a black and white kid who finds comfort and success and purpose in drawing that 8, we need to be careful that we don't try so hard to get them to be creative. Like we say, well, can you make something else out of that? Like, you can encourage them, but there are kids who need to draw that 8 just to make that work in their brain. And then that's what unlocks them and frees them up to be more creative. So encouraging them to be creative however they are, not the ways that we see immediately, just giving them the freedom, to be able to do, if they're more of a task kid, like, do the task and then what, and then what's next kind of thing, instead of making them all fit into a box.
Right. And, I'm thinking about your example about you saying, oh, that's a lizard. And they're going, that's not a lizard. Because I have little kids all the time that'll show me pictures and say, guess what it is? And I have no clue. And I'm trying to honor them by guessing, which then does discourage them. So just talking to you, I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start asking them to give me a hint.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, tell me, is it a man? Is it from, yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
So what other ways do we really encourage creativity in our kids? Like, how have you done that with your own children?
I think exposing them to all kinds of things outside of their comfort zone is really important. I think back to, I do love the arts, so I wanted them to come to the ballet and the musicals and the opera and all the things. And I think 2 of my 3 have really enjoyed it, but poor Adam. It's Adam again. When he was about 9, I had done a job with the Cincinnati Opera, and as a thank you, it was a volunteer job. As a thank you, they gave us magic flute tickets, which I thought was delightful. And I made a huge parenting mistake in making my boys wear suits, at like age 7 and 9. And this was before music hall was renovated, so it was really hot. So they went and they were just miserable. And, he laughs about it now. But what it did for him was, he's not afraid to go to something new or something that he doesn't understand, or, it just unlocks things in them to expose them to different things. And if you're talking about creativity, just any kind of experience, like museums or scavenger hunts. Scavenger hunts were a huge one for me when they were little. We could make anything interesting and fun and creative if you just draw a little box grid and you say, find these 10 things, and you go wherever. So just exposing them to things outside their comfort zone and making it somehow a game, an activity, and watch them just sort of unlock and let them take it where it goes.
And your family do you still do your annual scavenger hunts?
That's called a road rally. Yes, that's more of it's like Amazing Race before we knew that Amazing Race was a thing. It's kind of that through Cincinnati. We do it every like 4 or 5 years. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of things. But my parents did that. Actually, that's a good encouraging creativity through generations. My parents started that when we were kids, and having this whole, this is all before computers, so they had a wax sealed envelope with all the clues in it and all the different things. But that was really fun to continue with our family and with our kids. But that's the road rally.
It's a great tradition. What would you say, Paula? Because I know there are parents that are watching that are saying, okay, you're saying everybody's creative and everybody has this ability, but I don't. I'm not creative at all. I'm an accountant. I just do numbers.
Great.
Yeah. How can I help my kids be more creative if I feel like I have no creativity in me?
I mean, I think one is like use your community to first of all, you are creative. So everyone is creative in a way. So I would say number one, explore that. What is it? Are you a philosopher? Are you a strategist? Do you actually love something that you forgot about? When you were a child, you loved painting or things like that. So I would say explore, number one. And then number two, use your community. If you have somebody, I have, my best friend is like a business minded. When we were homeschooling for a couple of years, she did all of our math, and, I was really terrible at that. So you can lean on each other, and there's somebody in your circle who would be delighted to take a group of kids or families and go do a fun activity. And you don't have to come up with that stuff yourself. And so number one, I would look and challenge yourself, and there you are creative. And then number two, I would say lean on your community and reach out and see who in your circle would be the parent who would delight to have some kind of scavenger hunt in your neighborhood.
Right. And we're in the middle of COVID, so those people that you're reaching out to might not be in your circle, but gosh, you can do it through Zoom. I mean, we played games with your family over Zoom with May. That was so fun.
Yeah.
So just be creative in the ways that you connect with people.
Yeah.
Paul, I always love hanging out with you, but we're nearing the end of our time. So I'd love to give you the opportunity. Is there anything that you would like to leave with our parents? Any encouragement or challenge?
I mean, I would say, try one thing, do something. If that felt overwhelming, if it was too much information, I would say just pick one thing, do the TV channel game or have a family night. I think it's important that both parents are doing this. There's something, gender aside, there are two different parents in the home. Both of you will have creativity come out in different ways. And that is so important for your kids to see, because if they only see one parent engaging in that, and if their style or their type of creativity doesn't necessarily reflect yours, that could discourage them, or it could make them feel like they're not creative. So I would definitely encourage both parents to be involved. And then lastly, I would just say adapt, don't mimic. So, you have an idea and you want to put it right into place. I would say, think about it, sit with it, talk to your spouse about it, you talk with your kids, and then figure out what works for your family instead of, we have more time. I could share more funny stories of major fails we've had where I go, oh, that's a great idea, and just pop it into our family and we try it and it doesn't work. Because if you think about the boat thing again, we're all completely different families, not just kids, but our families have different makeups and we have different ways of going about our missions and objectives. So it's really important to adapt things and not just mimic to drop them in, or you'll be frustrated.
Well, go ahead and give us an example of when you tried to mimic and it didn't go well. You should have adapted.
I just saw Beth's comment, creative accounting might land you in jail. That's true. Okay. Not necessarily creativity, but it affected me so much that it's something I think about quite a bit when I think about adapting instead of mimicking. When I was little, I grew up with three of us. And my mom was this gentle soul. I tend to be like this, and she's definitely more calm and even keeled. And so we were fighting. I'm the middle child. My older sister and I were fighting one day, all day, that kind of, mom of young kids craziness where you're like, I'm not going to make it. It's
Mhm.
10:45 and they're at each other's throats. So we were probably 4 and 6. So I remember her taking us to the bathroom, and I remember it because it was a green raccoon rug. It was back in the 70s. And she put us both on the rug and said, she faced us to each other, and she said, I've had it. That's it. You guys are fighting. You want to fight with each other. Okay, fine. If you want to fight, hit each other. Go ahead. Just hit each other. And we just stared at each other, and we started crying, and we hugged each other. I love you, sissy. I'm so sorry. It was this beautiful moment of repentance and gentleness and sweetness. And that was it. And it's not that I thought about it over the years, but fast forward, and my kids were 6 and 4, Adam and Caroline, same thing, 10:45 in the morning. I'm a stay-at-home
Tried
mom.
to mimic.
I'm losing my mind. So I do the same thing, put them on the family room rug, tell them, that's it. I've had it, go through the same thing. Maybe it's because I'm a different parent. Maybe it's because my daughter had a brother. I'm not sure what it was, but they love to retell the story. I say, go ahead, hit each other. And Caroline winds up, knocks Adam in the face, knocks him down. And I'm just pulling them apart thinking, like, why didn't that work for me? I don't understand. It's the same thing. Why didn't that work for me? And I had to just really think through, well, because I'm not exactly my mom, and Caroline is not exactly my sister, and Adam's not me. And it's just different. We're all wired differently, our families are differently, and we parent differently. And
That's right.
we can argue about whether that was a great strategy or not. But the point is, I needed to stop and take a minute and take it, to God and my husband, and like, I'm having this thing. What can I do? And really think about how to adapt instead of just mimic and lift something up and bring it to our.
That's a great story. I think especially now, there's so many things for us to mimic because we're seeing so much of other people's lives, but
Yes.
we're also seeing just the good part. We're not seeing what happened right after that photo was taken or,
That's right.
yeah, that's good. So Paula, what you're telling us is if we have 2 children that are fighting all the time, before we put them on a rug and have them go at it, we should really consider if that is the best thing for our family.
Yeah,
or the way we can.
Yes.
That's good. That's good.
I forgot one tiny thing. Can I say one other thing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I just wanted to encourage everybody to remember to allow yourself to be creatively inspired. So whether that means you actually love to go to the theater, or you love to paint, or you take a drawing class or something like that, how important that is, not just me time, not just parent time, but actually time to be inspired. And again, I would say to the accountant, you are creative, and maybe that looks like you take a walk by yourself and you notice the trees. Like, I know that sounds silly, but that is something that our souls crave and that your mind needs to be able to create, again, not a production, but just whatever the next thing is that God puts on your heart. You have to be creatively inspired and fill up your soul, specifically, I think, around creativity. Can I keep going? I don't know how.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is the funny story that I don't know you've heard. It's really fast. My kids have said some really embarrassing things, Kim. So back when they were
children.
My youngest was in kindergarten, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and I love choreography as my background, dance, and all that. So I was doing some part-time pickup choreography for I think I was doing a musical or maybe a gymnastics routine. I don't remember, but I would go at night because I was a stay-at-home mom and Darren worked during the day. And so in kindergarten, one of the questions they ask is, what do your parents do? So my 5-year-old told his teacher and his whole class that his daddy was a physical therapist and his mommy danced at night. And I didn't find out about that until parent-teacher conferences. So it went from August to November before she actually confessed and said, I was just curious what you did, because this is what your son told the class that you did. So
that's awesome. Well, I'm thinking of where you said, when a kid paint or draw something you're not sure what it is, tell me more about your picture.
Yeah.
A great response to that would be, Paula, tell me more about your activities in the evening.
Cool.
That's good. Well, Paula, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And as we close, I would just love for you to pray for our parents.
I would love that.
Who are watching. Yeah,
that'd be great. God, thank you so much for all these parents on this call. Thank you for their intentionality and their heart around your purpose for them. and what they're tired. This is hard. Parenting is hard, and yet they are watching this video or on this call to be a better parent. And I just ask that you put a special blessing over them for that, that you just provide them with inspiration and energy and motivation and joy, and that their children would just continue to bring them amazing amounts of joy as they are observed, and they just unlock this potential in them for amazing things that they can go out into the kingdom and create and do amazing things for you, Lord. And I just ask that you watch over these parents and give them a great rest and give them connection as we're all dealing with this COVID times. And just thank you for all of them. And thank you for being someone who brings us creativity and inspires us to make fun and beautiful things. And we love you, and we ask these things in your son's name. Amen.
Amen. Parents, have a great week. Paula, you have a great week. And we'll see you all back here soon. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.